In this video, I'm going to be comparing my KitchenAid commercial mixer with a secondhand Ankarsrum mixer, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a secondhand Ankarsrum mixer that I picked up from Marketplace in order to be able to play with and just compare the two. I've heard such great things about the Ankarsrum mixer, and I wanted to go ahead and give it a try. For the purpose of this comparison, I have the exact same ingredients and recipes in both mixers. Everything is weighed to the gram to ensure that everything is exact in both mixers. So in my KitchenAid, I have all of my ingredients except for the salt and the yeast. And for the Ankarsrum, I have all of the ingredients except for the flour, salt, and yeast. Per the instructions and the tutorials I've seen, you should add in the flour gradually for the Ankarsrum, and so that's what I'm doing. And I'm first mixing together all of my liquid ingredients, and the recipe that I'm using will be in the description down below. And so as you can see, I'm gradually adding in my flour into the Ankarsrum, and my KitchenAid is just mixing away. And so for this recipe, you first start by mixing your ingredients until the flour is fully incorporated, which usually takes about 3 minutes or so in my KitchenAid commercial mixer. And once the ingredients are fully incorporated, then I usually allow it to rest for about 20 minutes. So you can see I'm scraping down my KitchenAid, and the ink is doing its thing here. It does come with a scraper, so that is a nice thing that I don't have to scrape the sides. And so I'm going to finish adding in the last bit of my flour into the ink mixer. And as you can see in the ink, it is having a difficult time with the dough, and I think it's because I'm doing just one loaf, and so the KitchenAid is done at this point. Um, it's been about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and the KitchenAid is now done with the initial mixing step, and I'm just trying to get everything fully incorporated in the ink mixer just so that I can allow it to rest. And it's just having a hard time since it is a small batch. It just keeps going through like this, and so I'm having to continuously adjust it in order to make sure that all the flour is fully incorporated, but it does end up coming together. I'm just scraping the dry bits of flour off of the dough roller. If you've had an Ankarsrum mixer for a while, I would really love your opinion on how I'm using this, because it is a learning curve with the Ankarsrum mixer. It's not like a traditional stand mixer, and so some of the issues that I may be having may be due to just user error and my lack of knowledge on how to use it. But here I am finishing scraping down the dough roller, and I'm going to go ahead and cover both of these for 20 minutes. Okay, so my 20 minutes is up, so I'm adding my salt and my yeast into both mixers. So far it took the KitchenAid 2 minutes and 40 seconds to do the initial mixing of the ingredients, and it took the Ankarsrum mixer 5 minutes. So now let's get into the actual kneading, and we'll see how long each of them take and just how user-friendly they both are. So the KitchenAid commercial mixer is doing its thing. There's no adjustments that I need to make at this point. At this point, I could walk away if I was only using the KitchenAid. And so for the ink mixer, I am having to kind of push the dough through. Since it is a small batch, it is having a little bit of difficulty. When I do more than one loaf, even just 2 loaves, I notice that I do not have this issue. So I do want to make that clear. And also for the KitchenAid, I can comfortably do 2 to 3 loaves in this without it overheating or making any strange sounds. Anything over 3 loaves, and I notice that I am pushing it for the KitchenAid commercial mixer. As far as KitchenAid mixers are concerned, I have had the KitchenAid Artisan mixer. I've had the KitchenAid Professional 600 as well. Neither of those two were up to the task as it pertains to fresh milled flour. Neither of them were really strong enough. I was able to get nice window panes with the Professional 600. It did do a decent job, but I could just tell that it would not last for very long if I had continued to use that for fresh milled flour. So I did end up upgrading to the commercial mixer. I enjoy having a KitchenAid for the attachments and then also just for the ease of use. I like being able to just have a bowl and a dough hook to clean. It's very simple, which was also a reason I was attracted to the Ankarsrum mixer because it's very easy to clean. You have a nice, wide, large bowl. And then also with the ink, I do like the fact that I believe I can do up to 6 loaves of my recipe in this mixer. I haven't put that to the test yet, but that is definitely in the plans to give that a try. But as I was saying with the KitchenAid commercial mixer, it is heavier duty than the regular professional mixers. They do look the same, but they are different. The motors are different. The motor on the commercial mixer is a lot quieter. And then also the paddle attachments are a lot heavier duty. And you can see here I'm just checking for window pane in the KitchenAid, and neither of them are at window pane just yet. In the KitchenAid commercial mixer, I usually get to window pane in under 10 minutes depending on the kind of dough that I'm making. I noticed that with doughs that are super enriched, like cinnamon rolls, it does take longer, closer to 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. But for my usual everyday loaves or rolls or my garlic knots, it usually takes under 10 minutes. Okay, and as we can see, the ink is now doing its thing. I no longer have to push it through now that some gluten is starting to develop. Now, also with the ink, I do really enjoy it for things like cookies. I haven't done any cake in it yet, but I love not having to scrape down the side of the bowl when I'm making cookies in it. Just doing another window pane check. As I can see that the consistency of the dough is changing, I know that we are getting close, but we are not quite there yet. This Ankarsrum mixer is actually a magic mill, which is one of the much older, well, I wouldn't say much older, but it's, I believe, from like the early 2000s. So it's an older Ankarsrum, but um, it still works just the same. I believe if we're going to compare a KitchenAid mixer to an Ankarsrum, I think it's only fair that it would be the commercial model because they are around the same price point. For this commercial KitchenAid, I did purchase it from the Costco Business Center, and I want to say it was $700. And I know the ink retails for $750, so I believe this is a much more fair comparison versus comparing it to, say, a KitchenAid Artisan. And as you can see there, I do have a nice window pane in the KitchenAid. It took 9 minutes and 20 seconds to get the window pane in the KitchenAid, and the window pane in the ink is not quite there yet, so I'm going to allow that to knead just a little bit longer. And I don't know why the KitchenAid is still going. I don't know if I forgot to take it out, but I did allow it to continue to knead for just another couple of minutes there. So here is a better view of the window pane that I'm getting from the KitchenAid. So you can see there, a pretty nice window pane. I'm gonna go ahead and check my other dough here, and nope, it still is ripping fairly easily, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue to allow that to knead. While the Ankarsrum continues to knead, I'm gonna go ahead and get my dough from the KitchenAid ready. I'm lightly oiling my bowl, and I'm going to get my dough into a nice neat ball and put it back into the bowl in order for it to rise. I don't know if I mentioned this, but it is quite important to say that these doughs are identical. Everything is weighed to the gram, and so the recipes in each mixer is exactly the same. So now I have my dough ready in my KitchenAid, and I'm checking for window pane. And again, it is breaking pretty easily. Um, oh, it's looking a lot better now. I think the dough is just about ready in the Ankarsrum mixer to come out, but I'm gonna let it knead for just a little bit longer to see if I can get a better window pane. I can be a bit picky when it comes to a nice window pane because it really does make a huge difference in your final product. I'm thinking the reason for the difference in kneading time is for the simple fact that the Ankarsrum does knead a lot more gently than the KitchenAid. I noticed that the dough in the KitchenAid mixer was a lot tighter, and so it got to window pane faster. But this window pane looks good enough, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the dough out. I'm just running it so that I can make sure the dough that's stuck on the scraper is incorporated into the dough ball. But I'm gonna go ahead and take this out and oil my bowl in the same way that I did with the dough from the KitchenAid. So in the Ankarsrum, it took 17 minutes and 30 seconds to get a decent window pane, and you can see it here. It does tear a bit easier than I would like, but I believe that it is good enough to go ahead and continue. So I'm going to remove it from the bowl just so that I can lightly oil the bowl, and then I'm going to put it back in to rise, same as I did with the KitchenAid. And I'm just continuing to check because it's not like what I'm used to. I'm used to getting um, a better window pane than this, but I can't imagine that I would need to continue to knead the dough. So I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the Ankarsrum and continue on in the process. The dough does feel a little bit more slack coming out of the Ankarsrum. It is very soft and supple. It did produce a nice dough, as you can see here. So again, the KitchenAid took 9 minutes and 20 seconds to reach window pane, and the Ankarsrum took 17 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm going to allow these to rise for about 30 minutes together. And now that they're done rising, I'm going to go ahead and deflate them, shape them, and put them in the loaf pans to rise. I'm going to go ahead and speed through the shaping process. If you'd like to get a better view of how I shape, I do have other videos showing how I shape my dough. In order to distinguish between the two loaves, I am sprinkling a little flour over the KitchenAid loaf in the shape of a K, and later on I did do the same thing. I put an A on the other loaf as well. And here they are when they are both done rising. You can see the KitchenAid loaf rose slightly higher than the Ankarsrum loaf. Now it's time to slice the loaves and see if there's really any difference. They're both very soft loaves, so I don't notice a difference in the softness. So let's go ahead and cut into it. And here we have a nice, beautiful, soft loaf. You can see how squishy it is. I'm gonna cut out a slice to be able to look at it. And it is nice and soft. Go ahead and compare that to the Ankarsrum loaf. Very soft, still squishy. So I'm honestly not seeing a big difference between these two loaves. As you can see, um, another beautiful loaf. The KitchenAid just rolls ever so slightly taller, but if I was only making one loaf, I wouldn't have even noticed the difference. All in all, I would say that they're both great mixers. Um, they both develop gluten wonderfully. The Ankarsrum did take a little bit more hands-on time, which I don't particularly like, but I notice when I do more than one loaf, I usually don't have that problem. The Ankarsrum also took longer to knead, but they both ended up finishing at the same time when it came to the rise. Before having an Ankarsrum, I would have thought that hands down the Ankarsrum would have beat the KitchenAid, but I'm slightly surprised. But again, it is the commercial KitchenAid, not the typical artisan or the professional kind. But I can say the KitchenAid would not be good for anything over 3 loaves, or if it was like a really stiff bagel dough, the KitchenAid would likely not be able to hold up. I would love to hear you all's thoughts on the Ankarsrum versus the KitchenAid commercial mixer in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching.